There's a strange kind of pressure that doesn't come from failure. It comes from comparison. You look at your life and nothing is technically wrong. You're functioning, you're surviving. Maybe you're even doing what you're supposed to do. And yet, there's this quiet feeling that you're late, late to figure things out, late to start, late to become who you thought you'd be by now. And the worst part is you can't explain it because when you try to complain, your brain shuts you down. You tell yourself, other people have it worse. You should be grateful. You're being dramatic. So you stay quiet. But the feeling doesn't go away. It shows up when you're alone, when you're scrolling, when you hear about someone else's progress, when you lie in bed at night thinking about where your life is going. And slowly, almost without noticing, you start asking a dangerous question. What if I'm falling behind? Not because you failed, but because time keeps moving and you don't feel ready. If that thought feels familiar, this video is for you. Because feeling behind isn't loud, it doesn't panic, it doesn't scream. It just sits there quietly, making everything feel heavier than it should. Here's something nobody really explains. Feeling behind is rarely about where you actually are. It's about the timeline you absorbed without realizing it. At some point, you learned that life was supposed to look a certain way by a certain age, not because anyone sat you down and explained it, but because you saw it everywhere. Online, in milestones, in announcements, in people sharing progress while you quietly questioned your own. So even when you're moving, it doesn't feel like movement because you're measuring yourself against a clock you never agreed to. And that creates pressure without direction. You're not chasing a clear goal. You're chasing relief. Relief from the feeling that you're running out of time. That's why everything starts to feel urgent. But nothing feels meaningful. You think you should be doing more, but you don't know what more even looks like. So your brain freezes. And when your brain freezes, it defaults to distraction, scrolling, watching, comparing, consuming other people's lives until your own starts to feel smaller. Not because it is, but because context disappeared. Here's the part most people don't notice. The more you compare, the less patience you have for your own process. And patience is what real growth needs. Without patience, every delay feels like failure. Every pause feels like proof. Every quiet season feels like you messed something up. So your brain turns uncertainty into self-blame. You tell yourself you wasted time, that you should have known better, that you missed your chance, but chances don't expire the way fear tells you they do. What actually expires is self-trust. The longer you believe you're behind, the harder it becomes to start anything, because starting feels like admitting how late you are. So you wait, and waiting turns into avoidance. Avoidance turns into guilt, and guilt convinces you that something is wrong with you. But here's the truth, nothing is wrong with you. You're not behind, you're just in between who you were and who you haven't become yet. And that space feels uncomfortable because it doesn't come with applause. No one celebrates uncertainty, no one posts about confusion, no one shares the middle, so it feels like you're alone there, but you're not. Most people are just hiding it better. You're seeing their highlight reels while living inside your own unfinished chapter. And unfinished always feels worse from the inside. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Being behind only exists if you believe life is linear, But real growth isn't linear, it's uneven, quiet, and often invisible while it's happening. Some lessons take time because they're changing how you see yourself, not just what you achieve. And those changes don't show up on timelines, they show up in how you think, how you choose, how you respond. But because they're invisible, you assume nothing is happening. That assumption is what creates the pressure to hurry, the pressure to prove, the pressure to turn your life into evidence that you're not wasting time. And that pressure is exhausting because you're not just living, you're constantly evaluating your life while living it. That's not growth, that's surveillance. And nobody thrives under constant self-surveillance. If this video feels a little heavy, that's okay. It means you've been paying attention to your life instead of running from it. That matters more than progress ever will. You don't need to rush into clarity. You don't need to catch up. You don't need to turn your life into a success story overnight. What you need is permission to be where you are without turning it into a verdict. Tonight, don't ask yourself where you should be. Ask yourself what you're carrying. Ask yourself which expectations actually belong to you and which ones you inherited without choosing. Because the moment you stop treating your life like it's late, it starts feeling lighter. Not because everything changes, but because you stop fighting time, you stop trying to outrun a version of yourself that doesn't exist yet, you stop punishing the present for not being the future, and when that pressure lifts, even slightly, you create space. Space to think clearly, space to choose deliberately, space for growth that doesn't feel forced. You're not behind. You're not broken, you're not running out of time. You're still here, still aware, still wanting something better. And that means your story isn't late, it's still unfolding, quietly, at its own pace. And that's allowed. There's another reason feeling behind hurts so much, and it's not time, it's visibility. You're living in a world where progress is constantly on display, announcements, updates, wins, even small achievements framed as proof of movement. And when progress is visible everywhere, stillness starts feeling suspicious, not restful, not neutral, but wrong. You begin to feel like if you're not moving outward, you're failing inward. So even when nothing is wrong, your nervous system stays alert, always checking, always measuring, always asking, am I doing enough yet? That constant checking quietly drains you because your brain was never meant to evaluate your entire life every day. It was meant to live it. But now, even rest feels monitored. You're not resting, you're recovering from comparison. And recovery takes time. Time you keep telling yourself you don't have. That contradiction is exhausting. Here's something subtle but important. Stillness only feels dangerous when your self-worth is tied to progress. If progress pauses, worth feels like it pauses too. So slowing down doesn't feel peaceful, it feels like falling. That's why silence makes your mind race. That's why doing nothing feels heavier than doing something pointless. Your brain is afraid that if you stop moving, you'll be left behind permanently. But that fear isn't intuition, it's conditioning. You were taught quiet equals wasted potential. But growth doesn't always look active. Some growth looks like waiting without panicking. Some growth looks like uncertainty without self-attack. Some growth looks like staying instead of escaping. Those kinds of growth don't show up on timelines, but they change everything that comes after. Another lie that keeps people stuck is the idea that clarity comes first. That one day you'll wake up ready, certain, confident, aligned. But readiness usually comes last, after action, after confusion, after trying something imperfectly. Waiting to feel ready keeps you frozen in preparation mode, and preparation feels productive. But it doesn't move your life, it just delays risk. You don't feel behind because you missed your moment. You feel behind because you're measuring yourself against an imaginary version of yourself who never doubts. That version doesn't exist. Everyone moves forward while unsure. They just don't broadcast that part. Instead of asking, "Am I ahead or behind?" try asking something quieter. Am I more honest than I was before? Am I less afraid of my own thoughts? Am I choosing based on fear or understanding? Those are real markers of growth. They don't trend, they don't impress, but they build lives that actually feel livable. Time isn't something you race, it's something you inhabit. And right now, you're still here, still thinking, still paying attention. That alone means you haven't missed anything. If you've been carrying the feeling that your life is late, pause with that thought for a moment. Not to fight it, not to fix it, just to notice it. Notice how heavy it's been. Notice how long you've been blaming yourself for something that was never fully in your control. You don't need to make up for lost time. You don't need to justify your pace. You don't need permission to exist where you are. You're not behind. You're in the middle, and the middle is quiet, uncertain, and deeply human. Let it be what it is, without turning it into a verdict. That's not giving up. That's choosing to move forward without violence toward yourself. You don't have to turn this moment into a lesson or a breakthrough. You don't have to label it or fix it. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do is let yourself exist without judgment, without urgency, without trying to catch up to an imaginary finish line. If you're here, still thinking, still reflecting, that already means something is alive in you. Not everything needs to make sense right now. Not everything needs a timeline. For now, let this be enough. We'll figure out the rest slowly.